Hey there, algebra students. This is going to be a review of what are called two-step equations, and as you might imagine, they require two steps to solve. Going along with the theme from our first video, if you watched that or what you learned in class, in algebra we need you to undo operations. We need you to do things to both sides of the equation to try to get x by itself. For two-step equations, as you might imagine, you're going to have to do two things to both sides of the equation in order to get x on its own. And so I'm going to look at 2x plus 5 equals 35 first. The first thing that I do is I think about what do I see in the problem. I see a 2 times x, and that's what it means for a 2 to be right next to a variable. It's times. And I see a plus 5. I'm going to make a little note out here to the side for myself. I see 2 times x, and then I see a plus 5. And if I think about my order of operations, the order of operations is PEMDAS, and multiplication comes before addition. And so I've actually written it over here in the order that it's written in the problem, multiply and then add. And so I'm going to undo those things in the opposite order. You have to undo backwards. And so the first thing I'm going to do is take away 5, and that's going to undo my plus 5. And then I'm going to undo times 2 by dividing by 2. And so let's see how that plays out. And so far all I've done is just thought about the problem, understood what's in it, and now I'm going to proceed with my plan. So I see a plus 5. I'm going to take away 5. That's the first part of my plan here. Take away 5. Since I did it to the left side, I have to do it to the right side, equal things to equal sides. And so now I think about plus 5 minus 5, plus 5 minus 5, that's 0. And so all I'm going to get left is 2x, because plus 5 and minus 5, they kind of cancel each other out. They make a 0. 35 minus 5 gives me 30. And so now I'm ready for the second step. This is my second step in my two-step equation. I'm going to divide by 2. And so I show division like this. Divide by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1, and so on the left side of the equation I'm going to get 1 times x, but I don't have to write the 1. I'm just going to bring down the x, and 30 divided by 2 is 15. And so I've taken two steps, and now x is all on its lonesome here, so it seems like I may have solved the equation. I'm just going to double check to make sure I have by plugging my value of 15 back in. So this is the way you check. If I've got x equals 15, if I think that's the right answer, I'll check it by going 2 and then replacing the x with 15 plus 5, and I'm checking to see if that's equal to 35. And so I'll do 2 times 15 first. This is the order of operations. That's 30 plus 5. And so I get 35, and that indeed equals 35. That's true. And so I've found the value of x that makes 2x plus 5 equal to 35. And so my answer must be x equals 15. And so two steps get a little bit more complicated only because you have to decide both what steps to take, undo addition with subtraction, undo multiplication with division, and also decide on the order. And you're basically doing the order of operations backwards. That's something we'll call a rule of thumb. It may not work every single time, but it's going to work for almost all of these two-step equations. Let's consider another one just to practice. So I see x minus 2 equals 20. So I'm going to make my little game plan here again. What I see in the problem is minus 2 and divide by 6. And so I'm going to think about what order I would have to do those in the problem. Because x minus 2 is on top of that whole division bar, if I were thinking about the order of operations, I would have to do that whole part first. So in this problem, the minus 2 comes first, and then I would divide by 6. And I have to undo backwards, and so I'm going to undo the divide by 6 first by multiplying by 6, and then I'll undo the minus 2 by adding 2. And so there's my game plan. I've just thought about what's in the problem so far, and I'm going to try to undo operations to solve it now. Now the first step in my game plan is to multiply by 6, and so I'm going to multiply by 6 right here. I'll put a little 6 times right there because you have to do equal things to equal sides. And so the 6 is here. 6 divided by 6 is 1, and so that I don't really need to write that. It's a canceled out, and so all that comes down is this x minus 2. And then I do 6 times 20, and that's 120. And so now I've multiplied by 6, and it indeed got rid of the divide by 6. And so now I need to get rid of the minus 2. I'm going to add 2. And so I get minus 2 plus 2, that's 0. And since it's 0, I don't really have to write anything. I'll just write x is equal to 120 plus 2 is 122. So let's check to make sure I'm right. I got to take my value for x and plug it back in. So I'm going to take 122. I always plug back in with parentheses to make sure that I don't make any mistakes with negatives or something like that. 122 minus 2 over 6, and I'm curious as to whether that is equal to 20. And so let's do a little arithmetic here. Order of operations says do the stuff on the top first because it's grouped by that division bar. 122 minus 2, that's 120 over 6. And then 120 divided by 6 is 20, and that indeed equals 20. So that is a true statement. That means my answer is correct, and I have x equals 122. 122 is the number that you can plug in for x that makes the statement x minus 2 divided by 6 equals 20 true. So again, big themes to remember whenever you're thinking about how to solve an equation. It looks like my air server kind of paused there. Whenever you're thinking about trying to solve an equation, you should think about what is already in the equation, and then what order do I have to undo them. And usually the order that you're going to undo them is the opposite of the order of operations. That's a review of two-step equations.